Hi guys, it's Dakota. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a great week. I thought today that I would do this video based on a question that was asked me a couple weeks ago, just in conversation. We were just having, one of those basic witchy kind of conversations, and someone asked me if I had to choose what would I use? What would be my first choice to use for spell work or spell crafting, etc.? And my answer was immediate, and it was something to do with fire magic. I am extremely drawn to fire magic, and I'll tell you why. So y'all know by now I am an air sign. And but I'm not really drawn to air as far as working with air. I do work with air occasionally, not often enough, I'm sure, if you were to ask air, or even some of the other elements. Now, I did work with water. I tried to work with water for about a year. It was probably one of my least used elements, and so I decided, working with fire, when you work with the elements, if you only just work with one element, like that is the only element that you work with, you tend to get a little off balanced. That element, I don't know what it is. I don't know if that element gets tired or whatever, but you really do become unbalanced. And I was feeling unbalanced. I was feeling some emotions that I didn't like, and I don't know, it just sort of hit me. Of course, we also had a class last year on water witchcraft at the store, and it just sort of put some thoughts into my mind. So I decided, okay, I'm going to really dive deep, haha, no pun intended, and into water and really invest some time and some energy working with water magic. And I will say that it worked for me. It did work. And it was a nice change. It was a nice change to be working with an element that is somewhat out of my comfort zone. And I did enjoy it. It was refreshing. And however, I just didn't get, it just wasn't me, I know that. I mean, I just knew that, I know that I can do magic now using water and get the end result that I'm looking for. But it doesn't resonate with my energy when I'm doing my spell work and my crafting. And nor does the air. And I'm not big into working with air magic. Now, I do work with earth magic, but fire, I always come back to fire. Fire is my go-to. So I mentioned that to them, that if I had my choice, it would definitely be fire magic. And of course, then the discussion went into, so what does that mean? And what would you use? And yada, yada. And so here's sort of how the conversation went. So fire magic, yes, fire magic is my go-to, which would mean in most cases, not all, but most cases means grabbing that candle. And I think I mentioned it before in one of the videos that I know there are people out there who think that fire magic is, a beginner's or a basics or whatever go-to. I am here to tell you that it is not. I am here to tell you that it is way more involved than just picking a candle that corresponds with the intention that you are trying to either manifest or release, and lighting it and saying a few words and thinking that that's going to be it. I'm not here to say that it won't work. I'm not the judge of that. Perhaps it will. For me, it's more about doing the work, as I've said in probably every single video. I'm sure you're sick of it by now. But so for me, fire magic is my go-to. When I say that I am drawn to fire and that fire is just within me, I'm very passionate about my work. I'm very passionate not just about my spiritual work, but I'm passionate about my job. I'm passionate about my personal life. I'm passionate about that. But I am extremely passionate about my magic and my work, my spiritual path, and I'm very driven and I'm very motivated and I'm very determined. And if you look up the correspondences to fire, that is sort of all the things that encompass fire. And so maybe that is one of the things. Maybe it's easier for me to work with fire because I feel those things naturally. I don't know, maybe. But so then the conversation turned to, well, what about fire magic? And I said, well, let's talk about fire magic. Let's talk about candle magic, because that is the first thing that people think of. And I do a ton of candle magic. I do. Candle magic can be anything from a tea light to a big giant pillar candle. I have a few candles that have, in fact, I'm looking at one right now. That is probably a good 8-inch, maybe even, it might even be a 10-inch round pillar 4-wick candle. So it can be as simple as a tea light to a big, huge candle. And once you have your candle, all the things that you can do to it. Again, I think I've discussed that in a previous video. But we've talked about inscribing into the candle, drawing into the candle, whether it be your intention, the words, maybe it's a sigil to help empower it, whatever. That's one thing that you can do. That being said, you can also use, like I have several things that I use to carve into or draw on a candle. So let's just take a tea light candle. Sometimes they come in the little metal things. Sometimes they come in a plastic container. And I take a magic marker and I draw my sigils all around the little lip of the metal thing. On the bottom, I can write intentions, whatever it is. You can paint on there. You can do whatever you want. You can still carve into the top of the candle. And then here's a nifty thing. So two of the items that I think I mentioned that I use for carving into my candles, besides just my basic tool set of candle carving tools, that's what they are, I like to use barbecue skewers. And the ones that I use are wood, and then I have some metal ones that I really like. And the thing about the metal ones is you can heat them up, and then you can poke holes down into the top of your candle. So you can do that with a tea light, or you could do that with a votive. You could do it with a pillar candle or a 7-day candle, which I do a lot, because how do you get herbs or oils or anything into those candles that are already poured and encased in glass? Well, I take my little poker stick, I've gotten it hot, and I poke down into the top of the wax, and then I can take my little pipette, the little oil bottle squishy thing, get a couple drops of oil and put on there, or else you can take or in addition to, take a pinch of herbs and push those herbs down into those holes. Take your poker, squish them down, and then seal them up if you want with a little bit of extra wax. Take your magic marker, draw the heck out of that glass, draw on the bottom. You can paint. You can use glue on it. I ask you kindly not to use glitter. It is horrible for the environment. So we're trying to really get away from using glitter. But they do make glittering, or they do make glue in color that you can just write on your candles, paint them, whatever. Okay, so that's what you can do. So that's how you can carve into. So that now you're putting your energy into it. All right, so let's talk about herbs. When we talked about dressing, and we talked about using an oil. All right, so oil would be then your water. Would be your water element. Because it's an oil, so it's going to be it's going to be the water element. Now, just because it's a water element or because it's liquid, let's put it that way, because it's liquid, you know, oils have their own properties. So if you're trying to do a calming spell, you're certainly not going to try to use some oil that is a hot chili pepper oil, because that's action, right? So you have to kind of think those things out. The other thing that you can use, which I consider water-ish, I have one of those coffee cup warmers, teacup warmers, and I have some safe bowls. One is metal. I have actually I have a few that are metal, and then I have some pottery type bowls, and I will put wax in there, plain wax, beeswax or soy wax, and put that in there so that it melts. Once it melts, now I have a pillar, it's about that big, probably about, I don't know, maybe 8 inches tall, maybe 2 or 3 inches in diameter. It's an old vintage pillar candle mold. And so I will pour the melted wax in there, and then take my candle and pardon me, take my candle by the wick and dip it in there, let it drip, and when you see it start to kind of get dry, then you can take that and you can squish the herbs on there, or your ground up resin or ground up stones, which is really awesome, earth, twigs, anything that you want to add that has the property of the intention that you're trying to manifest. The other thing that you can do with the melted wax is, now I use tin foil. Some people use wax paper. There are different items that you can use, but I use the tin foil, one, because I can use it over and over and over again, and it is recyclable, so that's what I use. I will take and I will pour a little bit of the wax, the melted wax, onto the tin foil, and then I take what I've already crushed up, whether it's the herbs, oils, the herbs, the stones, resins, whatever, sprinkle that into that melted wax that's on my tin foil, and then as I see it start to dry, take my candle and then I roll it into that wax, and that just pulls up all the wax and just squish it right onto your candle. So now you have herbs, so that could be earth, that could be air, and then again that could be a water element, because it had, before it dried, it had juices, I'm sure, in it. So when I do fire magic, I consider all those things, stones being earth, but you know, those things individually have their own properties, so it's really important to take all of those things into consideration when you're doing your fire magic. Let me see here. Okay, the next thing that makes me feel extremely witchy that I like to use, it would be my second choice. If I didn't have the first one, I'd probably use this one, and that is herbs. That being said, I actually have to look up herbs, their properties and what they're good for. I know my go-tos, but when I am working on, and I think I've told you before, I never do the same spell work more than once. I don't think I ever have. I might have, maybe I'm lying, but I cannot remember a time that I've ever done the same spell work more than once. And it's my opinion, it's just me. My opinion is that the universe wants you to work. It wants you to work for what what it's going to help you with. And if we say, oh, gee, this worked, I'll just use this all the time. The universe is like, well, you're kind of lazy, like, be creative, come up with something else. That's just how I feel. Anyway, I don't think I've ever done the same spell more than once. But with herbs, and I don't know, I just have not, I've not taken the time to study herbs, is what it is. A lot of times, it'll just say on the package the properties or what it's good for. But I do have I have a couple of herb books that I use. So if I'm looking for a particular spell work that I'm going to be working on, whatever it is, I try to look up different herbs and see what else I can use, and then go from there, because that helps the creative juices flow too. And there again, being fire, I like that energy of doing and going and finding, and that's that passion that I was talking about. So I think that fire is a little bit about creativity as well. It is also about destruction, but depending on how you use it, because a fire contained is pretty safe, and but once that fire is uncontained, then we have issues with that. So I think that for me anyway, I know that being creative in my spell work has a fiery substance to it, at least for me. So I like working with herbs, because herbs, again, I think that herbs carry all the elements. Sun, fire, because that's how they grew. Earth, because nutrients, the soil. The water element, because at one time it had most likely some kind of juice, sticky substance, the blood of the plant. And so I feel that it does have all the elements. So I really enjoy working with herbs. Now, I use herbs a lot when I am making, and I don't do a lot of this, but I do some of this, when I am making something for a client that is wanting some type of help, assistance. I will use herbs and etc., herbs, oils, etc., and make little gree bags or mojo bags, spell bags, whatever you want to call them. And there again, it's just that has all the elements, all of the elements in it. And I might give them directions that do this, and then when you've completed these tasks, take this and burn it. So there again is that fire thing that comes into it. The other thing that I consider one of my favorite tools is tarot. And I love tarot cards. I love reading tarot for others, not for me. I've mentioned before, I cheat, so I'm not fair with myself. But when I'm reading for somebody else, I'm just reading the cards. I mean, I have no preconceived expectation of what I want the outcome of this reading to be. When I'm reading for myself, if I have an intention or a question, or what is the end result of this, I think I kind of already have this predetermined idea of what I want. And if the final, if that end result card isn't that, then I try to find a way to manipulate the cards to make it so. But I love working with tarot in magic. In magic, I just love it. I will pull like a one card before the magic, or in the middle of the magic, or at the end of the magic. What is a message? What is a message? Give me a message. So I guess I do, in a sense, not that I'm doing a reading for myself, but I use tarot in my magic. I will do a one card pull for myself. And as you know, I'll do like a weekly pull. They're over there. I do a weekly pull, just a two card pull, sorry. A 2-card pull, 2 different decks, one from one deck, one from the other deck. The other deck is not a tarot deck, but I'll pull 2 cards just for the message of the week. And that's all I ask it, is just, what do I need to know? What should I be looking for, etc. But I do like to pull a tarot card during my magical workings and see where I'm at with that. So that would be my third thing. My final love is the cauldron. Duh. Which is obviously how I got the name of my, well, I got the name of my channel because that's the name of my coven, Coven of the Hallowed Cauldron. And the cauldron for me is it. That is the womb of magic. That is the beginning of, that is the creation, that is where all things come of, and where all things are stored. And so there again, you can have the fire of the cauldron. You can have the fire underneath the cauldron. I don't always use my cauldron for fires. I use it for other things. It is just, you know, it is the thing that holds all the magic. I love my cauldrons. The big, giant, old, giant, huge, I can't even pick them up. Huge, huge, huge. I have, I think, 4 or 5 of them. One is cracked. I still use it because I've had that cauldron for years and years and years and years, and it holds so much magic. I don't know what to do with it. I can't let it go, and that is still our main cauldron that we use when we have ritual. I just ask everybody, don't stand by the crack in case a spark flies out that crack. But I have like 3 or 4 perfectly good cauldrons, and I just can't get myself to use them. I have medium-sized cauldrons. I have smaller cauldrons, smaller, smaller, smaller. I've got tall ones on tall legs. I've got little ones that I use for incense. I love a cauldron, and so for me, if I had to pick one thing, then I'm going to pick the cauldron, because that is it. That is the beginning of, that is all things. It is knowledge. It is magic. It is inspiration. It is all one. It can do the fire, and it can do the water, and it is of earth, and it is of air. So that would be my first choice, and a match or a lighter to get that fire started. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. I had fun doing that. I always like talking about fire. So I'll see you next week. Have a great one. Bye.